Christians are people who tell time differently. It's not as if they avoid clocks and calendars. No one escapes that. But from the beginning, they have engaged in a very different kind of rhythm, finding themselves in a world where time has been transformed into an instrument of God's revelation. In other words, Christians made their own calendar and relive the story of God throughout the year. Let me demonstrate. So the church calendar is divided into two halves. The first half starts in December with Advent, and it stretches all the way to Pentecost in May or June. And this part of the year tells the story of Jesus, from his birth and death, his resurrection and ascension. And the second half of the year starts at Pentecost and then goes all the way to Christ the King Sunday in late November. It tells the story of God's people, the church. And for the next 6 months, the church follows this calendar and relives the story of Jesus. As any good story does, we'll start right at the beginning with chapter 1. This is where we observe the season of Advent and wait with expectation and prepare for the birth of Jesus. As chapter 1 ends, we move to chapter 2. This chapter brings news of great joy as we celebrate Jesus' birth and the feast of Christmas. We then turn the page to chapter 3. We remember the appearance of Jesus to the entire world, represented by the visiting Magi from afar. The story begins its climax with chapter 4. This ushers in the solemn season of Lent, where, like Jesus' real desert, we spend 40 days in a metaphorical desert, pulling away from created comforts to make space for God. This chapter is long and difficult, but the joy of chapter 5 is worth the wait. Jesus' resurrection from the dead makes Easter Sunday the ultimate celebration, which then leads to the 6th and final chapter. Jesus' story concludes not only with his ascension into heaven, but with the coming of his Spirit, sent to create a new community, the church, to continue his work on earth. To listen to the church tell the story of the Lord is to listen to the Lord of the church. Reliving the first 6 chapters of the year not only shapes our worship, but it brings Christ into our very lives today. In Advent, Christmas, and Epiphany, it's as if we're with him in his birth and earthly ministry. In Lent, Easter, and Pentecost, we are again right by his side through death, burial, and resurrection. Living our faith through the lens of Jesus sanctifies our own lives. For his is an epic story of darkness and light, grief and joy, struggle and rest. It mirrors the tensions and complexity of our own stories. And through it all, we're placed right in the middle of the great drama of God's redemption of the world. So you're invited to live the Christian year these next 6 months. The ordinary season is past. It's time to inhabit the story of God.